Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create ecosystems and environments where people thrive. Look, today's guest today is somebody that's doing it in the city of Charlotte, visionary leader whose work, in my opinion, is changing the trajectory of young lives across Charlotte. And not just young lives across Charlotte, but young lives across America. These young leaders are building the future, solving the problems, and getting exposed to career opportunities that are changing the trajectory of generations to come. Leanna is the founder and executive director of Exposure Project, an truly innovative youth development organization, helping middle and high school students build character and explore career pathways through hands-on learning. Outside of what she's doing as an executive director, she's a licensed clinical social worker with a background in mental health and youth development, holding degrees from Tuskegee University, Fordham University, and she's served youth and families across multiple states. But what she values most isn't her credentials, it's the individual lives that she's been able to impact along the way. She is creative, purpose-driven, and like she said before we started recording, look, she is brutally transparent. Leanna, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Look, I'm excited. I feel like we have crossed paths in so many personal ways, but then also professional ways. I know of a few students that have been through your programs and the impact that it has had on them in their lives. But, before we get into all of the work that you do, who are you? How would you define who you are outside of the role of executive director, founder, and all of the things that you're doing?
Oh, that's a really good question. I have to think about that for a moment. Who am I outside of job titles? I am bold. I am transparent. I am probably one of the kindest humans you'll meet to a fault. And I'm very curious. I'm very creative. And I just believe in impactful things. So yeah, that's me.
Where would you say this came from? Because a lot of people, they are not just born this way, right? There was something that they were exposed to. There was something that they saw. There was someone that they came encounter with, or the book or a podcast or some experience that transformed their life. Where would you say that you got your values that you just mentioned? Where are those rooted in?
Yeah, I don't know that I can name one particular area. I think it's definitely through lived experience throughout the years. I can remember being a child and just always being naturally curious about all things. Now, as a child and growing up, it's not always received in the best way. Of course, when you have friends that are like, who cares about some of those things? But I think regardless of, some of those responses, my curiosity is just a part of me. And I think that's led me to other areas that allow me to tap into my boldness and being transparent in some of those things. I think going back to what I stated before about lived experiences, growing up, I was a bit of a shy kid, but still was always thinking about something. And so I think the more that I started speaking up and sharing my thoughts, the more probably more in my adult years, it was a little bit more received. And I think that allowed me to be more bold, and then transparency probably came from a variety of lived experiences, some good, some not so good. But yeah, it has made me who I am.
No, I love that. And one of the things that I value about you is that you're truly committed in not just working with young people, because there's a lot of people out here that say they're working, quote unquote, with young people. You're actually making a difference in the lives of young people. When did you first realize that you were called to do that work?
Oh, when you say called, I'm like, I don't know that I've ever thought about it in that way. I remember working with kids when I was a kid. One of my first jobs was being a camp counselor at my church in high school. And so, or was I high? Yeah, it was high school. And I think probably that experience allowed me to just really tap into well, what does this mean to really work with young people? And so I think that kind of carried over into my adulthood. It's looked different throughout the years. But in terms of calling, I can say when I probably have accepted it was probably in my college years, because I had to do a practicum in a middle school. And I remember, and I think this is probably across the board, whether it's with kids or a lot of different areas, that I don't always recognize what my true strengths and powers are. And so in this practicum experience, I just have a natural connection with people, especially young people. And I think I didn't think too much of it until kind of, I won't say comparing, but observing some of my peers and some of their relationships with kids, and it wasn't really the greatest. And I'm like, okay, so what is it about me? And I'm like, I think that's just me. So I think it probably was my grad school years that I really accepted the calling.
And this calling has not only been accepted, it's been received well. Like, you guys have really been able to make an impact within the city of Charlotte. You've impacted over 100 kids. You've helped engage families, over 100 families. You've had hundreds of hours of programming, hundreds of different career fields, and all of these different things that you've done. And those are, in my opinion, numbers on paper.
Mm-hmm.
But what does the impact really mean to you? Like, when you look back and recognize what you've built and how you're a household name now in the city of Charlotte, when you look at this, how does that make you feel?
Well, I think you asked probably 2 or 3 questions in there. So I'll start with the latter part. In terms of how it makes me feel, I think every day is different, because while I do agree that a lot of impact has been made, I still know that there's still so much to go. And so sometimes I live in the what's to come versus what's already happened. So in terms of how I feel, I'm so appreciative to even be given, I guess, this opportunity to be in this space in this way. I think every day there's little things that remind me of, you've progressed throughout the years. It's been a long 6.5 years, but 6.5 years ago, you had a different set of problems. And so I think I'm grateful. And then there was another question you asked before, how do I feel? And I do not remember what I was going to say. It'll come back to me.
It's all good. We'll come back to it. And you said something that, 6.5 years roughly, you had a different set of problems at the beginning versus what you experience now. Can you walk through what were those problems at the beginning, and how has your organization really evolved to where it is now, and then maybe some challenges that you're experiencing currently?
Okay, so let me go down a journey walk from the last 6.5 years. So the problems when I first began, so when I first started Exposure Project, I was doing many things, which I'm still doing many things now, but I was also working a full-time job as a therapist. I also was a foster parent and was trying to build this organization without having true experience in building anything in that way. And so the problems, and I was doing it in a bit of a silo. So while I did have a little part of community, it still was very much me doing things alone. And so I think the problems then was, does this concept actually make sense? Is it impactful? Like, am I doing the right things? You mentioned earlier the numbers, and you said it's more than numbers, and I hope that to be very true. And so I think at the time when I was doing a pilot program, it was just that thought process of, okay, is this working? Now, it's probably not helpful that in the middle of that first pilot program is when COVID happened. And so when COVID happened, we had to pivot to a remote space. In initially designing the program, it was never designed to be a remote experience. And so thinking about, okay, how does this organization still live and hold the true essence of the creativity and that hands-on experience? How does that live in a remote space? And so I think that was one set of kind of concerns at that time. And I think just also learning, like, there's so many pieces to running a nonprofit. It's really running a business, just a different tax status. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. So in the beginning, I didn't have that knowledge. I didn't have that skill set, and I didn't have funds. And so doing this off of asking my friends and family to donate, dollars here or there, but having a big dream, like, that was a challenge. So I think those were some of the problems at that time. When I think about fast forward to 6.5 years, it's kind of interesting how, yes, they're different problems, but they're still somewhat the same. And so while, yes, we have been blessed to receive funding throughout the years, I'm not going to say we're still, because we go through different waves. So we're back at kind of a critical time of this funding space of How do we make sure that our work continues to go forward with limited funds? And now the dream, people have believed in the dream. People are able to see the success. But it's one thing when you can see the success and you don't truly know what's happening behind the scenes. So that's where I say they're still a little bit similar, but different in various ways. I think now, because the work has gotten so much larger, I need a team. We need a team. And while we have like really strong volunteers and community members that are dedicated, there's still a lot of nuanced pieces that goes on with having a team and running a team and what that means. And so, of course, I can speak more deeply into it, but I think that's kind of the gist of back then versus now.
You know, I really appreciate your level of transparency, because having a team, like building a business is one thing, and doing it as a sole proprietor or as a consultant or as a thought leader and you just doing it. But once you get to people management and recruiting and retention and all of the various things that come with developing a team and really scaling it forward, it's a challenge. It's a challenge that I don't think a lot of people really talk to or talk about and give a lot of credit to those leaders that are really building their organizations as well as their infrastructure and their teams. But go back to when you said that, you know, nonprofit organization building is business building. It's nonprofit is just a tax status. What are some of the things that you've seen? Because you interface with a lot of different nonprofit organizations. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you're seeing that nonprofits are missing? That first year organization that really wants to make an impact, what are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things that they're overlooking that can help them be able to really be in the position to succeed?
Yeah. Okay. So before I answer that question, I want to go back to something you said about the team, because something came up for me as you were speaking. With the team, I think about Before Exposure Project. I'm not necessarily new to running teams. So the work Before Exposure Project, I used to be a director over like after school programs, teen programs, adult programs in New York. So I had a very large team of staff at that time. And I've been in supervisory roles a lot of my career. But there's a difference in running a team when you have resources to provide to that team and you are able to pay them versus running with volunteers or limited resources, because now their stake is a little bit different versus a staff member that is getting paid to do something. So I think that's kind of another piece that's not often spoken about in the space. But to go back to the last question you just asked around what's kind of the missing mark of it. And I want to say, as I answer this question, I'm going to say this with love, right? And providing grace, because a lot of times nonprofits really just don't know what they don't know, and there's no fault to them. And I don't think there is truly environments that you would have been able to know that these things before you got into the space. So one thing I would say is really being your own educator in this world. So what I mean by that is we're always, to be existing, to be a human, you're constantly learning things. Yeah. And even though there's not a formal, and maybe there are formal structures to how to start a nonprofit, but it's not like you go to school and say, okay, I'm going to take class A, B, and C, and now I'm going to get my nonprofit license and I know how to run it. I think the biggest piece that a lot of nonprofit leaders starting out is I don't know that they take the time to truly understand that business piece. What does it mean to actually have a set of bylaws? What does it mean to submit an article of incorporation? What does it mean to have these governance policies in place before you start? And I don't think I think a lot of times we enter into the space, I want to help people. I want to be impactful. I want to serve this amount of kids or this amount of adults, which is really great, but it's equally important to understand, what is my infrastructure like? Because if my infrastructure is not as strong as the actual work I'm doing with the people in the community, it's going to be a disaster. So I think that's a lot of the pitfalls, is just understanding like those pieces of what it means from an infrastructure standpoint, like of how to run a nonprofit.
I've been hearing that word a lot: infrastructure. Just like impact. Like everybody's used the word infrastructure or impact. Yeah. How would you define though what infrastructure means? Like if there's a nonprofit leader listening in, executive director, grassroots, that's wanting to really build their infrastructure, what are the actual things that are necessary or that are key components to them building their infrastructure?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm saying this off of my knowledge now, because in the next year I can have some more knowledge and it may be a little different. Yeah. And it's also different for everyone and what their infrastructure looks like. Essentially is how when I think about infrastructure on an overarching kind of theme. How is your organization able to be sustainable? How is it able to run in every aspect? And so I kind of break that up into maybe 5 categories or so. So one would be that program piece, the implementation of program, the evaluation of program. Is it working? Is it not working? How are you including those participants or, those that you're serving in that kind of evaluation process? So that's the kind of your program piece of it. I also think about it from the operation side of things. I think there's various categories. So from a legal standpoint, again, do you have those bylaws? Do you have your charitable solicitation license that you're renewing every year? Like kind of those pieces that keep your organization afloat. Are you filing your 990s, your tax information? So that legal side of things. Then of course you have the finance side of things. A lot of times we talk about finance from fundraising perspective only, but things that I think about often is if I were to get a $2 million grant right now, could I actually handle it? Do I have the people? Do I have the things in place from a reporting standpoint, from an execution standpoint, from all of those things? So we're talking about financial policies. What is your gift policy? What is your, your financial controls? Who's accepting the money in what time frame? Who's the checks and balances part of it? And then I think also paired with that is fundraising. Yes, I know I need to raise X amount of money, but who's doing this and in what time frame and what does this look like? Is it grants? Is it earn income from something? Is it an event that I'm putting on? Is it sponsorships? And so thinking about what are all of those areas that I'm hoping to, what are my projections and what are the lanes that I'm hoping to bring money into? And then how do I really devise, or how do we, because it shouldn't be an individual thing. As an organization, how do we devise a plan to make sure that these fundraising efforts actually come to light? So I would say fundraising as well. And then the last piece I would say is marketing. How, it's important to know that our nonprofit, I would like to say, it's my baby, right? And it's also my product. If the world doesn't know that the product exists, then how are they able to support us? How are they able to give to us? How are they able to volunteer in some of those things? So from an awareness standpoint, am I talking to people about the event? What do my visuals look like? Am I keeping my things updated? What do people actually see? Or what do they actually hear? Because they don't always know the behind the scenes pieces. They only know, what you post on LinkedIn, what's on your website, what's on your Instagram. So how do you make sure that those things really reflect how you want to be represented in this space, both now, how you are, and then how you want to be in the next 5 or 10 years?
That's so good. Oh, that's so good. And I love how you mentioned earlier, like if you were to get that $2 million grant or gift, do we have the processes or people or systems or, just infrastructure alone to be able to handle that type of gift? When you think of all of what you just mentioned, it seems like a lot. And for the average nonprofit leader, I feel like they probably would feel overwhelmed in a lot of hearing what you just said. Yeah. Where does someone start though? Like, do we start with marketing? Do we start with the system that where would I start?
Yeah, this is going to be probably a response that you are not expecting me to say. I would say start with sitting in silence. I think that, and I've been doing a lot of that lately because yes, and I will kind of run through some of the tangible things where someone can start. But I think when one is feeling overwhelmed, check in with yourself and think about what are the things that's causing you to feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we already know all of the answers, but we don't really sit with ourselves to actually reflect on what those things are. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed because it is just too much information, write it all down. Let's prioritize what needs to happen first, second, and third, what time frame. And I'm saying this, but I'm also guilty of not taking my own advice sometimes. So I'm working through some of these things. But I think sitting in silence is first. I think the next step is before starting a nonprofit, it's important that you understand why you're doing this and if there really is a need. So I would say volunteer for an organization that is similar first to make sure that you're not doing duplicate services, or if you are going to do duplicate services, be able to speak to how is yours either different or how are you continuing to serve that population on a larger scale. So make sure that you know why you want to do it. Then in terms of the super logistic side of things, and I'm thinking about what I would have done starting out, not necessarily what I did do, which it will probably be. I'm just thinking, I wish early on that I had different infrastructure things in place. And I know that it may not be all of the pieces, but all those kind of 5 categories that I just mentioned is thinking about how do I, at least on a low level, have something in each of those areas to start off with. So if it's marketing on a small level, am I only going to do LinkedIn and Instagram for the first year, right? Or am I only going to do email marketing for that first period of time? Thinking about those things. And the last piece is, we spoke about this earlier. Having a team really, really is important. And usually in the nonprofit space, your first form of team is your board. And so taking a lot of time to think about who are those members that I want to be a part of my board, because really they are the key pieces to ensure that your organization thrives in every way. And so thinking about, and I know there's always this kind of mismatch of starting out, I want to have people that I know and that's going to kind of rock with me and be there for me and my family and friends. And I'm like, please don't do that. But think about, how do you have a diverse board in terms of like that skill set, right? Like, how do you have somebody that maybe has that marketing background so that if you don't know that area, they can help you there? Somebody that has the finance background, the legal background, the tech background. So thinking about it in those kind of areas. So that was a bit of a loaded answer, but sit in silence and then lead to the team.
Leadership is hard, and anybody listening in, she's not saying that it's going to be easy, because it's taken 6 years to be able to get some of these realizations and revelations that you're implementing on a day-to-day basis today. Leanna, what was one of the hardest leadership lessons that you've had to learn?
Ooh, that's a really good one. I probably learned it this last year, actually. The hardest leadership lessons. There's so many. I'm trying to think of like which one do I kind of want to lean into. The hardest leadership lesson I learned is that sometimes it really is not about me. It's really not. So meaning that, like, when you're in this space, at least I'll speak for myself, I tend to take things personal. Are used to sometimes in terms of like what is or what isn't being done. And sometimes it has nothing to do with me. People have other priorities and that's okay. So it's understanding that, like, taking myself out of the way. But the other piece of that is, I think you have to lead with like being transparent and being compassionate. So I think like this year has been a challenge for us. And so I've just been able to really be like transparent with those that are on the team to let them know, like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's how I'm feeling. What are you thinking? Like, how do we move forward? So yeah, I think the biggest lesson is just getting out of my own way, getting out of my own way. And then also just understanding that sometimes with leadership abilities, like, you don't have to, I'm going to say this kind of loosely. Sometimes it really is just in you. I had a mentor that she came to something that I was doing, and I remember her saying like, oh yeah, you're a natural leader. Like, you have to do this. You're going to be good. And I remember responding with, what if I don't want to lead? Like, I don't want to be a leader. Like, I don't want to do that. And her response was, well, you don't really have that choice, because that's kind of naturally who you are. And I think the deeper thing was, it wasn't that I didn't want to be a leader. It was that I was scared. And I think I had in my mind what leadership should look like, although I had been doing it probably naturally since I was a kid. But I think it was kind of reshaping my mindset. But yeah, I think sometimes leadership, you have it in you. So it's just, how do you cultivate those things that you naturally have?
When you think about the idea of cultivation and these natural things that you already have, you came from a field of mental health and now you're in youth development. Mm-hmm. What has your background in mental health helped, or how has that really helped you do the work that you're doing with a lot of these youth in the city?
Really good question. So yeah, in that background of social work, I've had like various positions. So like worked for foster care prevention programs. So we're talking about working with families who there's potential of their child being removed from their home. From working in, the housing authority in New York. It's kind of some not so good neighborhoods with providing programs that way, doing therapeutic services myself. And then also right now I do not a little bit. I'm also an adjunct professor at UNCC with social work students. And so when I think about kind of all of those different lanes, I think the interviewing skills, which is kind of like those one-on-one engagement ways of how do you speak with a person, make eye contact, open-ended questions, active listening. I think that is the biggest thing that has been able to be kind of woven through all of my work with Exposure Project, is just really being human first. People connect with people before they connect with what you're actually doing. And I think those skill sets of engaging with really great clients, really challenging clients, with systems that I absolutely hate, with systems that I love, that you learn an ability of like, how do you, I don't know, I guess, how do you like kind of show up in those environments in a real way? I think that's probably what I've taken from that and apply now.
No, I love that. And I think there's so many misunderstandings, especially somebody coming from education and seeing it from a teacher side and an administrator side. I think that there's a lot of people that misunderstand youth development work. And your work, what do you think? Like, what do people misunderstand, or how are we misrepresenting the importance of youth development work?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. You have a lot of good questions. I know I've said that a lot, but I really do mean it. I think what's misunderstood sometimes, we know that there are millions of youth that exist in this world. We were once youth ourselves. That is the way that the world works. And I think about, in terms of youth development programs, a lot of times they're chalked up to just, oh yeah, it's another after school program. They're helping the kids. And even if we were just another after school program helping the kids, that still is beauty in itself, because those kids can be doing something completely different. Who's to say that in that after school program, they don't have this aha moment that really is the catalyst for what their life looks like once they leave there. And so while I don't necessarily language us as an after school program in that way, I think for us, I just drew a little bit of a mind blank on the question. You've developed a misunderstanding. I think for us, it is knowing that there are a lot of times, there is research that goes into youth development programs and the models that are being implemented. And I think there needs to be a little more respect on that. And I also think, just in terms of the youth itself, we're talking about, people say the future leaders. We say a lot of cool things and phrases, but I don't know how much people actually sit in what that phrase means. So when we're talking about youth development and young people, these are literally the people that are going to be leading the world in the next 5 to 10 years. So the person that you're going to get your taxes done, that's probably a person that's young right now. The person that you may go to purchase your house, that is a young person right now that's cultivating those skills. So it's important to know that these little humans are the people that are essentially going to potentially make your lives better in the future or not. And so I think that reserves respect in itself.
Nah, definitely put some respect on the name of Exposure Project for sure. As I think about that, there's so many layers, right? I think that people on the outside have so much to say about these youth development programs, or like you put it, these after school programs, but we're not contributing to the success of not the program per se, but our youth development process. If you could redesign in totality how we, as business owners, as parents, as just human beings, prepare our young people for the future, what would you change?
Now, when you say redesign and what would I change, tell me a little more about that question, because remember, I'm curiosity, I'm a dreamer. I can go from a systems level to a individual level with parent and child to a school, school system. So maybe a little more clarity first.
Let me give you some clarity. So what could we do? Let's start here. What could we do as parents to better assist you in your work, to be able to ensure that these students are prepared to be able to go on in the workforce and be leaders, or not just in the workforce, but in life, and be leaders?
Well, that's okay. I would say is to learn the art of listening to your young person. And I think sometimes parents will listen just enough to give you a response on what you should do.
That's good.
not to listen to actually let you come up with some of the things on your own. As we're talking about preparing for these young people, I think about my success is rooted in me being curious. And I think if we listen to our young people and their curiosity, and if we're talking about it from a youth development perspective and maybe that career readiness space that we live in, then I would say if they are curious in, it doesn't matter the smallest thing, or even if they're not curious and you notice that they are really good at, I don't know, something sensory wise or something like that. Think about what's something that they can get into to actually hone in on that skill. There's a lot of skills that just never, nothing ever happens because no one ever cultivates those with their young people. So I would say first is listening to see what are they saying, and then listening to what they're not saying. So observing those things that, like I just mentioned, those skill sets or those other pieces, and then feeding those curiosity moments, getting them in programs, getting them in things, talking to people that allow them to really, again, lean into those skills.
That's a great answer. That's such a great answer. I find that exposure has been honestly the catalyst to everything that I've built today. Like my parents did such a great job early on in life, exposing me to just various things just outside of sports. Cause I think a lot of times we're only exposing our students and our children to sports program, but there's so many other opportunities, especially now, that you can get kids involved in. So I guess with what you all are doing, why is Exposure Project the best option?
Yes, why are we the best option? So if we're just taking the name exposure alone, I think you kind of reference this, you don't know what you have never seen, right? You don't know what you've never seen. And so to just put it in the most simplest form, what we do is allow young people to see different things. And that is career, that is see different things, meet different people. That is careers, that is just anything outside of their immediate environment. And that really is what helps them with their next level. But to go deeper into what that looks like. So we have a tiered approach, and we're doing a little bit of restructuring right now. But our first tier is when our young people, we work with middle and high school kids, they come in and the goal is for them to have exposure to all things. So that is exposure trips. It can be in our exposure trips on a larger, not larger scale, but are like a group of about 15 students or so. That can be anywhere from them going to American Airlines to learn about the art of aviation and ride in a airplane simulator and speak to all the employees in the airline, to our more intimate experiences that can range anywhere from talking to a venture capitalist and learning about how do you design your own app, to culinary and some of those things. And so that's kind of our initial approach of like, just see all the things. Because to your point, I think you mentioned that a lot of times students are in like sports related activities. And that's the main reason why Exposure Project was started. Because me working in all these areas, I asked young people, what do you want to be? And I kept hearing entertainer or a rapper. And there's nothing wrong with any of those. But the reality of every kid being in that is probably not going to happen. But the deeper issues that they have never seen other careers that even exist. And so again, that's kind of the first tier, seeing all the things. And then a few years ago, I was thinking about like, we have to go deeper than just them seeing these things in that way. And so we developed our youth-led food truck initiative. So it's how do they get these real life hands-on skills? They're not just hearing about it, but they're experiencing it. So with this exposure initiative, it's them building a business from the ground up. So not them just cooking, because a lot of times we think food truck, oh, they're cooking, they're learning about culinary. It's you're learning about all the industries that align with building a business. That's photography, that's advertising and marketing, that's graphic design, that's financial literacy, that's learning the basic business concepts. What is a profit and loss statement? How do you develop a budget for a business and a budget for yourself? And so we're talking, so with Exposure Project, again, we're exposing them to the careers, but we're also helping them get these tangible skill sets that they need in any career that they chose. I hope that answered your question a little bit, but
It sure did. And I've literally seen and heard the response and the impact of your programs. And I just want to give you your flowers. The work that you're doing is exceptional. And it's truly changing lives. When you look at Exposure Project, not 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months from now, but 5 years from now, like, what are you all doing and what change do you want to make?
Oh man, listen, I'm such a dreamer. I don't even think we have enough time to share all of the dreams. But in 5 years, I know that at that point, we really will be like at a true stable in a stable position, like with all the infrastructure things that I spoke about earlier. And from an impact perspective, I'm thinking about how do we go deeper in what we do now? I'm not always so big on like, how do I make sure that I'm serving hundreds and hundreds of more kids? Is how do I make sure that the 20, 30, 40, or 100 kids that I'm serving are actually getting the skills that they need to go to the next level? So yeah, I can speak about the dreaming of like, I want to have expansion of a few different sites, but ultimately I want every kid that we're working with, and we're talking about 5 years, and let's say I'm working with my 8th grader and they're graduating, I want them to be able to identify what career they're going into. I want them to either be enrolling in college or enrolling in a trade or actually going directly into that career. So again, it's thinking about how do we go deeper in the work that we're doing with our young people. Now on the program dreaming side, with the food truck initiative, I have so many thoughts on like how to actually make that a big enterprise, right? So now we're talking about our kids they learn photography in these different pieces and they have the skill set. So how are they able to use that to help other companies or nonprofits? Or if we have kids that are now learning about advertising and marketing, how do they work with other nonprofits and so on and so forth with culinary and all those different pieces? So I think opportunities are kind of open, but overall it's just making sure that our impact is a little bit deeper.
Somebody's listening in right now and they're as intrigued as I am in this conversation. How can we support? What do you all need? And how can we work together to continue to advance your impact forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, we just need about 1.5 million right now. That'll allow us to really be able to breathe and, focus on the work. In all seriousness, I really do need that. But I would say from a volunteer standpoint, finding out what area, I guess, intrigued them the most. If it is, I know a lot of times people think about volunteers in terms of the direct work with kids. I want to help the kids. I want to make the bags. That's cool. Do all those things. But if that is your area of working directly with kids, then maybe it's volunteering. We do I don't think I mentioned this earlier, a big youth summit every year. It's an experiential youth summit coming up on May 2nd. So that's a good way to like engage with the kids in that way. Or just be an industry expert, expose them to your career and let us come to your environment and see what that's like. And then maybe on the operation side of things, it is, you may say, okay, I've heard her mention some things with infrastructure. I have an expertise in this area. Let me come in and help them with marketing, or we are open. We are doing board recruitment right now. So maybe being a board member. But essentially, I know that I have joked with the 1.2 million because there's a little truth in every joke. But the senses that I was going with that is helping us means, because I want to be very clear in what I say when I say this as well, helping us really allows us to breathe. And I think sometimes with volunteers, while volunteers have very good intentions, I don't know that volunteers understand the weight of their role in an organization. That if somebody is interested in being a part of something and committing, is exploring what does that commitment actually look like? Because if it is not a good time, then that is perfectly okay. But we are in a season that whoever is a part of the organization, in whatever ways, if it's a one-time event or it's every week for the next year, there has to be true commitment and showing up for the organization and showing up for our kids, because that's what really matters.
This is so good. Leanna, if a young person is listening right now and they're feeling unseen, their parents or their colleagues or their mentors are just wanting to push them into a sports program, but they feel that there's more to them. They're unsure about their future. They're unsure about what's next in their lives. What would you say to them?
Oh, so many things. What would I say to a person that's feeling unseen? I would say, I know that I'm thinking about young people and their personalities as well. Because I was getting ready to say an answer. I was like, ooh, would I really say that? Because I don't know. But I really would say, if they have a desire for anything, no matter how big or how small it is, don't lose that desire. Write it down. Even if you don't have somebody in your network right now, write it down and that person will come to you. But even more than that, young people have a lot of power that they don't always realize. So even if a parent is pushing them or an educator is pushing them, there is always somebody out here in the world that's willing to help them in whatever ways that they can. And so seek out who those individuals are. If it is emailing a person and say, hey, I just think your career is cool, I want to learn more about it, doing that. If it's going somewhere and getting out of your comfort zone to an event or to a space that or just going to a store and, you know, talking to somebody, that's another way. But essentially, I would say the biggest thing is just whatever that desire is just holding on to it and knowing that you're going to be good. Like, it's okay. If you thought it, it's going to be real. So, yeah.
I love that. Leanna, you are a light. You are really a light. You are everything leadership. You are impact. I really appreciate how you've shown up with so much of your heart, authenticity, and your transparency and your wisdom that you've even shared with our listeners today. Where can people find out more information about Exposure Project? And again, how can we get you to that 1.5 or $1.2 million?
Okay, yeah. So first, in terms of where to find more information about us, you can check us out on our website, exposureprojectinc.org, LinkedIn, Exposure Project, Instagram, Exposure Project _INC, and same for Facebook. And then in terms of how to get us to that 1.2 million plus, I would say the first step is we are in the next 2 weeks to today, we're going to be a part of a pitch competition called C20. How we win that competition, which is $20,000 for first place, is from votes alone. So if you're watching this and you're like, you know what, I can't give the 1.2 million right now, but I could cast a vote, then that is the first step. And so it is a ticketed event. I think the event in person is actually sold out right now, but there's virtual abilities to attend. So C20 Social Venture Partners in Charlotte, that's a shout out for them, and then go look them up. But yeah, I would say with 1.2 million getting us there, it's also, no, I won't say that. So yeah, we'll end on the things that I just mentioned.
Anybody listening, go vote right now. Go vote right now for Exposure Project to win. Go support the organization. Go identify and look up volunteering opportunities. If you are interested in being a board member, reach out. If you're interested in volunteering and continuing to support the next generation of future leaders in this country, in this world, support the organization. Leanna, I appreciate you so very much. And one of the questions that we always ask our listeners is, what type of culture are you spreading?
What type of culture am I spreading? I would say probably, that's a good question. What type of culture am I spreading? Probably a contagious one. I love that you mentioned earlier, like me being a light. I think when I sit in this space, I'm able to really sit in this space. And so I think just naturally being myself and being in different environments is contagious or infectious in its own way. So I think being a light, being human, being authentic, being real, I think those are all the things that make me me, and that's the culture that I'm spreading.
That's it. Anybody listening right now, go spread some contagious culture. The energy you bring is the culture you create. Go make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.